Good afternoon, children. Today we are going to learn the chapter The Third Level by Jack Finney. The story dwells on the theme of escapism, not only as a psychological refuge from the grim realities of the present day world, but also as a desire to stay with the past or to keep the past alive in the complexities of the present. The story of the third level clearly explores the science fiction genre of time travel. The story interweaves fantasy with the reality in the most futuristic projection of time travel. So, children, we can call it a psychological thriller. The presidents of the New York Central and the New York New Haven and Hartford railroads will swear on a stack of timetables that there are only two. But I say there are three because I have been on the third level of the Grand Central Station. Yes, I have taken the obvious step. I talked to a psychiatrist friend of mine, among others. I told him about the third level at Grand Central Station, and he said it was a waking dream wish fulfillment. He said I was unhappy. That made my wife kind of mad. But he explained that he meant the modern world is full of insecurity, fear, war, worry, and all the rest of it, and that I just want to escape. Well, who doesn't? Everybody I know wants to escape, but they don't wander down into any third level at Grand Central Station. Okay, children, when the chapter begins, you are introduced to a person, okay, Jack Finney himself, as it is mentioned in the first person narration, I. Actually, he talks about a Grand Central Station. There is no third level for the Grand Central Station, but he sees the third level and he consults a psychiatrist friend of him. And he says that it's a syndrome, it's a disease called waking dream wish fulfillment. Underline that, okay? And he also remarked that I was unhappy. He said the author was unhappy. And he explained that the modern world is full of insecurity, fear, war, worry, and all the rest of it. And he just wanted to escape. So, children, here comes the main theme of the chapter escapism. So, the remarks that yes, everybody wants to escape from this hectic modern world. But that is the reason, he said, and my friends all agreed. Everything points to it, they claimed. My stamp collecting, for example, that's a temporary refuge from reality. Well, maybe, but my grandfather didn't need any refuge from reality. Things were pretty nice and peaceful. Children, here, please note down a temporary refuge from reality. So the author was someone who really wanted to refuge. Okay, a refuge from the reality. And what he used to do for that? He used to do stamp collection. But he remarks that his grandfather was not someone who was in need of a refuge from reality. Why? Because things were pretty nice and peaceful during the grandfather's days. In his day, from all I hear, and he started my collection. It's a nice collection too. Blocks of four of practically every US issue, first day covers, and so on. President Roosevelt collected stamps too, you know. Anyway, here is what happened at Grand Central. Now he remarks that stamp collection is a very good hobby, and it was the hobby of the President Roosevelt also. And now he comes to the main point, main content of the story. One night last summer, I worked late at the office. I was in a hurry to get uptown to my apartment. So I decided to take the subway from Grand Central because it's faster than the bus. Now I don't know why this should have happened to me. I'm just an ordinary guy named Charlie. So what is the protagonist's name? The central character's name is Charlie. 31 years old, I was wearing a tan gabardine suit and a straw hat with a fancy band. I passed a dozen men who looked just like me, and I wasn't trying to escape from anything. I just wanted to get home to Louisa, my wife. So, what is the name of his wife? Louisa. I turned into Grand Central from Vanderbilt Avenue and went down the steps to the first level, where you take trains like the 20th century. Then I walked down another flight to the second level, where the suburban trains leave from. Ducked into an arched doorway heading for the subway and got lost. That's easy to do. I have been in and out of Grand Central hundreds of times, but I'm always bumping into new doorways and stairs and corridors. Once I got into a tunnel about a mile long and came out in the lobby of the Roosevelt Hotel. Another time I came up in an office building on 46th Street, 3 blocks away. What happened? He was having a very hectic work that day and he worked late at office and he wanted to reach home in a hurry. So what he think? He thought of taking the subway from Grand Central. And what happened? He's actually lost in his way. And he says that it's usual, okay. He has traveled through the Grand Central station 100 times and many times he has lost his way. Sometimes I think Grand Central is growing like a tree, pushing out new corridors and staircases like roots. There is probably a long tunnel that nobody knows about feeling its way under the city right now, on its way to Times Square and maybe another to Central Park. And maybe because for so many people through the years, Grand Central has been an exit, a way of escape. Maybe that's how the tunnel I got into. But I never told my psychiatrist friend about that idea. So he says that it is very amusing to get into Grand Central Tunnel and get lost the way. It's a sort of escapism. The corridor I was in The corridor I was in began angling left and slanting downward, and I thought that was wrong, but I kept on walking. All I could hear was the empty sound of my own footsteps, and I didn't pass a soul. Then I heard that sort of hollow roar ahead that means open space and people talking. The tunnel turned sharp left. I went down a short flight of stairs and came out on the third level at Grand Central Station. For just a moment I thought I was back on the second level, but I saw the room was smaller. There were fewer ticket windows and train gates, and the information book in the center was wood and old looking, and the man in the booth wore a green eye shade and long black sleeve protectors. The lights were dim and sort of flickering. Then I saw why they were open flame gaslights. Now what happened when he came there? He's seeing something strange. He saw that when he thought that he was back on the second level, the rooms there were smaller and only fewer ticket windows were there. The train gates and the information booth all were looking so old and wood. And the main booth, the people who were sitting there also looked quite odd. There were brass spittoons on the floor, and across the station a glint of light caught my eye. A man was pulling a gold watch from his vest pocket. He snapped open the cover, glanced at his watch, and frowned. He wore a derby hat, a black four-button suit with tiny lapels, and he had a big black handlebar mustache. Then I looked around and saw that everyone in the station was dressed like 18, 19 something. I never saw so many beards, sideburns, and fancy mustaches in my life. A woman walked in through the rain gate. She wore a dress with leg of mutton sleeves and skirts to the top of her high-buttoned shoes. Back of her on the tracks, I caught a glimpse of a locomotive, a very small courier and ice locomotive with a funnel-shaped stack. And then I knew. To make sure, I walked over to a newsboy and glanced at the stack of papers at his feet. It was The World, and The World hasn't been published for years. The lead story said something about President Cleveland. I found that front page since in the public library files, and it was printed June 11, 1894. Now, what happened? For his further amusement, he comes across the people who were dressed like in the 18th and 19th century, and he's coming across a newspaper which was dated June 11, 1894. Actually, that newspaper, The World, was not published for years. I turned toward the ticket windows, knowing that here on the third level at Grand Central, I could buy tickets that would take Louisa and me anywhere in the United States we wanted to go. In the year 1894, and I wanted 2 tickets to Galesburg, Illinois. Have you ever been there? It's a wonderful town still, with big old frame houses, huge lawns, and tremendous trees whose branches meet overhead and roof of the streets. And in 1894, summer evenings were twice as long, and the people sat out on their lawns, the men smoking cigars and talking quietly, the women waving palm leaf fans with the fireflies all around in a peaceful world. To be back there with the First World War still 20 years off and the World War II over 40 years in the future. I wanted 2 tickets for that. So now Charlie was imagining herself to be in the year 1894 and he is moving to the station from where he could buy tickets to Gatesburg, Illinois. Actually, why he wanted to go to that place because it was a heavenly place. The clerk figured the fare. He glanced at my fancy hat band, but he figured the fare and I had enough for 2 coach tickets. One way, but when I counted out the money and looked up, the clerk was staring at me. He nodded at the bills. That ain't money, mister, he said, and if you're trying to skin me, you won't get very far.
And he glanced at the cash drawer beside him. Of course, the money was old-style bills, half again as big as the money we use nowadays, and different looking. I turned away and got out fast. There's nothing nice about jail, even in 1894. So what happens when he tried to buy 2 tickets for him and his wife? The man in the ticket counter said that this kind of money we won't accept. And when he checked the drawer, he found out that it was the old-style bills. And that was that. I left the same way I came, I suppose. Next day during lunch hour, I drew $300 out of the bank, nearly all we had, and bought old-style currency. That really worried my psychiatrist friend. You can buy old money at almost any coin dealers, but you have to pay a premium. My $300 bought less than $200 in old-style bills, but I didn't care. Eggs were 13 cents a dozen in 1894. So what Charlie did in the next day lunch hour break time, he is withdrawing all his savings, about $300, and he is exchanging and getting the old style currency. And he got 200 in old style bills. But I have never again found the corridor that leads to the third level at Grand Central Station. Although I have tried often enough, Louisa was pretty worried when I told her all this and didn't want me to look for the third level anymore. And after a while I stopped. I went back to my stamps. But now we are both looking every weekend because now we have proof that the third level is still there. My friend Sam Weiner disappeared. Nobody knew where, but I sort of suspected because Sam is a city boy and I used to tell him about Galesburg. I went to school there and he always said he liked the sound of the place. And that's where he is all right in 1894. So what happened is that even though he searched for the third level, he was unable to find it out. And what happened, his wife Louisa was pretty worried after hearing whatever he told her. And what happened is that he is going back to his stamps and they were having the weekend checking it. And they got the proof that the third level was there. But in between what happened, Sam Weiner got disappeared and Charlie believed that Sam went to Galesburg in 1894 because Sam was very fascinated whenever Charlie used to tell him about Galesburg. Because one night, fussing with my stamp collection, I found, well, do you know what a first day cover is? When a new stamp is issued, stamp collectors buy some and use them to mail envelopes to themselves on the very first day of sale. And the postmark proves the date. The envelope is called a first day cover. They are never opened. You just put blank paper in the envelope. That night, among my oldest first day covers, I found one that shouldn't have been there. But there it was. It was there because someone had mailed it to my grandfather at his home in Galesburg. That's what the address on the envelope said. And it had been there since July 18, 1894. The postmark showed that, yet I didn't remember it at all. The stamp was a 6-cent, dull brown with a picture of President Garfield. Naturally, when the envelope came to Granddad in the mail, it went right into his collection and stayed there, till I took it out and opened it. The paper inside wasn't blank, it read. Okay, why Charlie was feeling that Sam went to Galesburg? Actually, when he was taking the stamp collection that weekend, he comes across a first day cover. These first day covers are the envelopes which the stamp collecting people will send to themselves and they will not open it. But that night, among the oldest first day covers, he found one which was not there in the earlier, and it was addressed to his grandparent house, his grandfather's house at Galesburg. And it was having a stamp with a picture of President Garfield. And what was the content of the paper inside the blank? There was address, Galesburg, Illinois, Charlie. I got to wishing that you were right. Then I got to believe you were right. And Charlie, it's true. I found the third level. I have been here 2 weeks. And right now, down the street at the Dallas, someone is playing a piano. And they are all out on the front porch singing, seeing Nellie home. And I'm invited over for lemonade. Come on back, Charlie and Louisa. Keep looking till you find the third level. It's worth it, believe me. Actually, that was a letter from his psychiatrist Sam. Actually, Sam went to the third level and he got the tickets to Galesburg and he reached there. From there only he's sending this first day cover to Charlie. And Sam said, it's so amazing out there at Galesburg, and he's inviting both Charlie and Louisa. Actually, children, Sam, even though he is a psychiatrist, he also wishes to escape to the past days. It shows the escapism which is evident in a psychiatrist also. At the stamp and coin store I go to, I found out that Sam bought $800 worth of old style currency. That ought to set him up in a nice little hay, feed and grain business. He always said that's what he really wished he could do. And he certainly can't go back to his old business. Not in Galesburg, Illinois in 1894. His old business. Why Sam was my psychiatrist. Okay, now when he inquired, he found that Sam had already bought $800 of old style currency, and that will be enough for Sam to begin a hay, feed and grain business in the old Galesburg. And Charlie was so much confused to realize that even his psychiatrist wanted to go to the past days in the time travel machine.